What's good, y'all? We are back. Welcome back to another episode of Bird's Eye View. I got a lot of gems for y'all today. Today, I'm going to be revisiting my 5 stock picks from my first video and talking about how they've been performing over the past month since Trump announced the tariffs. Then I'm going to go into Trump's trip to the Middle East and how Trump is giving us the blueprint to the stocks we need to be owning for the next 5 years. And then I'm going to be going into the tax bill that Trump is currently trying to pass and how not only could it be detrimental to your wallet, but also the wallet of the entire US government. So stay tuned, y'all. You don't want to miss this. Let's lock in and get this money. Y'all know how we do this. Let's get into the disclaimer. This content is to be used for informational and educational purposes only. These are not formal investment recommendations. These are just my opinions on what I see in the market and what I'm doing with my own money. Please do your own research and only make investment decisions based on your own personal circumstances. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, in my first video, I gave 5 stock picks that I thought would be great investments to hold in the portfolio for the next 5 years because not only are they essential to the US economy, but they're essential to the global economy. And those 5 stock picks were Nvidia, Taiwan Semiconductor, Meta, Amazon, and Netflix. Now, if you've been watching my Instagram, I've made a couple posts on how my portfolio has grown over the past couple of weeks since Trump has pulled back his tone on tariffs and he's reduced the tariffs on China. But I wanted to focus on where these stocks were priced at when I made this video and then where they have been over the past week or so. So I made my first video on April 13th. I'm going to go through these one by one. On April 13th, Nvidia was priced at $110. On May 16th, Nvidia reached a peak of $136 per share. That's a 23% gain. Taiwan Semiconductor. On April 13th, it was priced at $157 per share. On May 14th, it reached a peak of $196 per share. That's a 25% gain. Meta. On April 13th, it was priced at $544 a share. On May 14th, it reached a peak of $663 a share. That's a 22% gain. Amazon. On April 13th, it was priced at $185 a share. On May 13th, it reached a peak of $215. That's a 14% gain. And then lastly, Netflix. On April 13th, it was priced at $918 a share. And on May 16th, it reached a peak of $1,196 per share. That's a 30% gain. If you pull all those together, that's an average return of 22.8%. Now, getting 22.8% in a single year is actually a great return. Just for context, the S&P 500 historically has returned 10% annually for about since the 1950s. So a return of 22.8% in a year will beat the S&P 500. If you invested in these 5 stocks, you would have beaten that in a single month. And just so you can put that in perspective, if you invested $100 in each of these stocks, you would have made a profit of $114 in 1 month. If you kept that money in a high yield savings account, it would have taken you 6 years to earn that same return. If you kept that money in a traditional savings account at a large bank like Chase, Wells Fargo, or Bank of America, after 50 years, you only would have made $2 in profit. So I want you to let that sink in. So when you see all these headlines about, stocks are losing trillions of dollars in value, everybody's selling stocks, the world is crumbling, that is the time you need to be taking advantage because buying quality assets at good prices will always benefit you in the long run. Getting a 14% gain is great in a single month. And with these prices, like I mentioned, at its peak, Nvidia hit 136, TSM hit 196, Meta hit 663. These still aren't all-time highs. Nvidia's all-time high is 155, which is still about 15% from where we are now. TSM's all-time high is like 220, which is about 10 to 15% from where we are now. Meta's all-time high is like 750. So there's still so much more for these stocks to run. And when you see stocks like this that earn billions of dollars in profit and have billions of dollars in cash, you have to take advantage of them. And look at how much you missed out on by not taking advantage of these great companies at great prices. Now, as I said, I do not own all of these, but I do own 3 of them. I own Nvidia. I have about 19 shares of Nvidia. That's my largest holding right now. I own Meta. and I own 2 shares of Meta, and I own Amazon. I have 6 shares of Amazon. I just bought another share of Amazon on Friday. So these are all great companies. Now, moving forward, you are going to have to wait a little bit. These stocks are very overbought right now. We're not out of the woods yet. Even though Trump reduced tariffs on China so far, he reduced tariffs on China from 145% down to 30%, but only for 90 days. He still hasn't announced tariff reductions on the other countries that he placed higher tariffs on, which are about to expire in July, I believe. So we're still not out of the woods yet. There's still a lot to go. But I just wanted to show you what you could have made in these stocks that I gave. One, because I know my shit, y'all. I just had to pop my shit a little bit. But also because I just want you to see how the stock market works. When you see big downturns like that, and these are companies that are essential to the world and also have so much money that they're not going out of business no time soon, you got to take advantage. Think about how much money that you spent over the past month and what you spent it on. How much of those purchases have made you $100 in profit? And if you invested more than that 500, you would have made even more. So just think about that the next time you're about to go buy some shoes or buy a bag, or, go spend some money on some bottles or a section in the club. Put a little bit of money away on the side into your investment account and let that money work for you, because you won't have to lift a finger to make profit on these investments. Really quickly, I want to touch on something that one of my homeboys just put me onto. Shout out my boy Darren for putting me onto this. It's a great way to determine when it's a good or a bad time to buy stocks. And it's called the Fear and Greed Index. The Fear and Greed Index is a great indicator to see whether stocks are overbought or oversold. And it shows you how retail investors and institutions feel about stocks at any given time. So looking at the Fear and Greed Index I have right here, this is from CNN. You can access this for free. If you type in CNN Fear and Greed Index, it'll take you right to it. Looking at this, you see 5 categories. You see extreme fear, neutral, greed, and extreme greed. Now, remember the quote that I gave on Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett said, when others are fearful, be greedy, and when others are greedy, be fearful. And this gauge is a great way to see at any given time where we are in the stock market. So as you can see, as of May 19th, we're at greed, because stocks have shot up a lot since Trump has pulled back his stance on tariffs. And stocks have run up. So the greed index is pretty high right now, which means you don't really want to touch stocks. But look at where it says a month ago. Extreme fear. Everybody was fearful. Everybody was selling stocks. And like I said, when others are fearful, be greedy. And I just gave you the numbers on how stocks have performed since that time. So if you ever are curious about, is it a good time to buy stocks? Is it not? Look at this Fear and Greed Index. Like I said, you can go to Google and type in CNN Fear and Greed Index. Again, shout out my boy Darren for putting me onto this. And this is a great indicator to let you know when it's a good time. Whenever you see this indicator hit fear or extreme fear, especially extreme fear, it's time to lock in. It's time to buy some stocks. And whenever you see it hitting greed or extreme greed, it's time to chill. That doesn't mean you should sell. That just means you shouldn't put more money into the market just yet, and you should just wait and see what happens and then go from there. But I just wanted to show that because I think it's a great way for new investors to know whether or not it's a good time to put money into the market. Let's talk about Trump's visit to the Middle East. So last week, Trump visited 3 Middle Eastern countries. He visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. And he didn't go alone. He took some of the top CEOs of some of the biggest American companies with him. And before I get into why, I just want to read off some of these names for you. He brought Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT. He brought Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, which is another top chip company in America, Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, and Jane Fraser, the CEO of Citicorp, who owns Citibank. But these are some heavy hitters. So you think he came and brought all these top CEOs for nothing to a foreign country? Nah. So the reason for that is because Saudi Arabia announced plans to spend $100 billion into American companies to build out AI infrastructure. So what does that mean? That means they got to buy chips, which are sold by NVIDIA and AMD. They have to invest in data centers, and they have to invest in data center equipment. So that presents a huge opportunity for AI focused companies, especially AI chip companies like NVIDIA and AMD. And just so you can understand how big, so far, about 50% of NVIDIA's data center revenue, which is them selling chips to cloud companies, comes from what are called hyperscalers or large cloud service providers. These are companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, etc. So like I said, these few companies, is about 5 or 6 of them, represent about 50% of NVIDIA's largest revenue earner. But foreign countries like India and Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries want to build out their own data centers so that they don't have to rely on these companies like Microsoft and Amazon. So they want to build data centers in their own countries. And to do so, they have to buy chips from companies like NVIDIA and AMD. Now, the reason that they haven't been able to do so to that degree is because the Biden administration put a chip restriction on other countries like India, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Switzerland, and so on. But Trump recently just lifted that restriction. So now there isn't as big of a limit on how many chips these countries can buy. Now, a Bank of America analyst said the new sovereign AI deals could eventually be 10 to 15% of annual AI infrastructure revenue. In the long term, that would add up to roughly $50 billion a year in additional revenue for NVIDIA and AMD. I mean, come on, y'all. Like, they've really given us the blueprint on what we should be owning over the next 5 years. NVIDIA has the best chips in the world to build out AI infrastructure, and Trump just lifted a restriction that limits foreign countries on how many chips they could buy. So they have limited restrictions on how many chips they can buy, and they just announced they're going to be spending $100 billion to build out AI. Like, I don't know what else I need to say, but like, they're telling us where we need to be putting our money. NVIDIA is going to be leading this AI race like they have been doing for the past 2 to 3 years. It's time for us to lock in. Lastly, let's talk about this tax bill that Trump is trying to pass. Trump is calling this bill the big, beautiful bill. So the reason he's trying to pass this tax bill is because a lot of the tax cuts that Trump put into place back in 2017 and his first term are about to expire next year in 2026. And if these tax cuts expire, it would significantly increase taxes for everybody, for billionaires, for average Americans like you and me. So they're really dead set on not only extending these tax cuts, but increasing them. But I'm going to just go through what they're planning to cut to pay for these tax cuts and what they're planning to spend that money on. So they're looking to cut taxes. They're looking to cut $3.82 trillion in taxes. They're looking to increase spending on defense and the military by $144 billion. They're looking to increase Homeland Security spending by $177 billion. And this bill will also cause them to pay $580 billion in interest payments. And I'm going to get back into that later. Now, what are they cutting to be able to cut taxes for everybody else? They're planning on increasing the national deficit by $3.26 trillion. They're looking to cut $910 billion in Medicaid spending. They're looking to cut $351 billion in education and Pell Grants. And they're looking to cut $230 billion in SNAP benefits. These are things that average Americans, like, the elderly and people that are retired, but also low-income people rely on drastically because they rely heavily on federal funding. So cutting these things would be extremely detrimental to the average American. But just to go more in depth about that, I saw a very interesting interview on Bloomberg that gave some very astounding numbers. So first of all, the national debt, money that the United States government owes to foreign countries and investors, is $28.4 trillion. Now I want you so you can understand how big a trillion is. If we're talking about time, 1 million seconds ago was 12 days ago. 1 billion seconds ago was 32 years ago. Now, I don't know what that conversion is for trillion, but 12 days ago to 32 years ago, from 1 million to a billion, like, I don't think we need to do the math to know how big that is. And this tax bill is projected to add about $4 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. To give some more numbers, 18% of the United States' revenue goes to interest payments on its debt. Almost 1/5 of all the money that we earn as a country goes to paying off debt. Imagine 1/5 of your income going to paying off credit cards and bills and stuff like that. That's crazy. We spend more on interest payments than we spend on Social Security, Medicare, and the military. We spend $1 trillion per year in interest payments, which is insane. And they're trying to increase that number even more. Now, why is this important? Because as the U.S. increases its deficit, they'll have to print more money and put more money into circulation. If they print more money, each dollar you have becomes less valuable. So I have two examples for y'all. First, think about a pair of Travis Scott ones. Now, Travis Scott ones might retail for a couple hundred, but some dude over here who got them might resell them for 1,000. And why is that? Because they're in limited supply. You can't just go to your local shoe store to get Travis Scott ones. So that means you have to pay whatever the seller asks you to pay for it. But what if you could get a pair? What if you could just go down to Foot Locker and get you a pair of Travis Scott ones? It wouldn't make sense to spend $1,000 on Travis Scott ones, would it? That's what's happening with the US dollar because they're not in limited supply. Another example is, I'm going to use McDonald's. I remember when I was growing up, a McChicken used to be $2. When you got to the register, it was $2.12 because we had 6% sales tax. So if you had a $5 bill, you could get you 2 McChickens. And I saw recently that a McChicken went up to like $5 and some change. So now, if you got a $5 bill, you can only get 1 McChicken. That is inflation at work. And when you keep putting dollars into circulation, you keep losing value in money. That means you have to work harder to buy the same amount of stuff. That is why investing is so important, because the only way that your money can outpace inflation is by investing in stocks, investing in cryptocurrency, investing in assets that increase faster than the inflation goes up. So I just wanted to read these numbers to you so you can understand where we are and understand the importance of investing, because right now it's critical that we own investments. Otherwise, it's going to get to a point where they might be creating a permanent underclass. Like if you don't own stocks, you might be like, it's going to be tough. So I'm trying to put us onto this information and put us on game so that we don't end up in this position. Pass this information to as many people as you can, your friends, your family members, so that we all can benefit and we don't have to be stuck in this rat race of slaving for the next 40 years and struggling. You know what I'm saying? So pass along this information so that we can all get rich together. That wraps up another video. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I hope y'all learned something new today, and I hope this video inspires you or somebody that you know to get into investing. I'm not here to gatekeep. I'm here to share as much information as I can so that we can all get rich together. Please drop a like and a comment on the video, and please subscribe so that you don't miss future videos. Again, I appreciate all y'all for the support. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week, and let's lock in and get to this money, y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all next time. Peace out.